Chapter 24, The Tragedy in Islam and the Bible Verses that Foretold It. Written and produced by Thomas Ty Seal. Copyright Thomas Ty Seal, unless otherwise noted. As we saw in the last chapter, there was much in Islam that advanced civilization. Indeed, for hundreds of years, Islam carried the light of civilization. It gave us universities, hospitals, and welfare systems. It spread libraries and made tremendous advances in architecture, arithmetic, art, astronomy, biology, geography, medicine, navigation, philosophy, and technology. Some of its cities were abuzz with interreligious dialogue and learning. Through preserving and digesting classic Greek text, Islam also gave us the European Renaissance. And yet, it did not bring the kingdom of God to earth. It did not end war or oppression. It did not unite the peoples of the earth. And in the end, it has become yet another troubled religion. To understand why, we must step back and look at Islam in prophetic perspective. Jews, Christians, and Muslims are all descendants of Abraham. In the same way that Christianity makes little sense without understanding Judaism, Islam is best seen through the eyes of both Jewish and Christian prophecy. When this is done, amazing insights are revealed. These are not warring religions. They are one religion, telling one tale across the scriptures, which, it seems, many of their followers dimly understand. Indeed, much of the Bible is uninterpretable without Islam, and the Bible can also help us better understand Islam. While it may seem like an odd place to start a review of what happened to Islam after Muhammad died, the New Testament provides a remarkably precise account of what happened to Islam. Consider the revelation of St. John. In John's vision of the end times, a woman appears who is pregnant with the promised one. The child who is to rule all nations is born, but due to the appearance of a dragon that opposed this child growing to maturity, the child was caught up to heaven, and God's plan to bring peace and justice to the world was postponed for 1260 days. The verses read, "A great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on its heads. Its tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth, so that it might devour her child the moment he was born. She gave birth to a son, a male child who will rule all the nations with an iron scepter. And her child was snatched up to God and to his throne. The woman fled into the wilderness, to a place prepared for her by God, where she might be taken care of for 1260 days. Christians have never been able to provide a convincing interpretation. That is likely because they've never considered Islam. The interpretation is, however, rather straightforward if you do. The woman with the crown of 12 stars is a Judeo-Christian heritage from which Islam arose, like a child growing in a pregnant woman. The 12 stars would be both the 12 tribes of Israel and the 12 disciples of Jesus. As you'll see, they are also the 12 lineal descendants of Muhammad, who he wished to assume leadership after his death. The moon under the woman's feet is Islam, symbolized even today by a crescent moon, perhaps indicating the partial eclipse of Islam's light. Muhammad, or more precisely the dynasty he was meant to establish, was the child born to rule the nations with an iron scepter. The dragon is the desire for secular power and greed that always opposes God's cause. Through the actions of the dragon, the maturation of Islam into the spiritually led government that the Bible promised would bring peace to the world would be thwarted, but only for 1260 days. As Bible scholars know, the days of prophecy are equal to human years, as you can see from Numbers 14:34, Ezekiel 4:5-6, and Daniel 9:24-27. These years predicted the length of the Islamic dispensation, which brought us to the year 1844, which is also the Islamic year 1260, and the end of the 2300 years of desolation in the book of Daniel, which we reviewed in part 1 of chapter 21. The Hebrew prophet Malachi also spoke to us of 1260 days. Jews expect two events at the end times, the return of Elijah and the coming of the day of the Lord. In the book of Malachi it is written, "See, I will send the prophet Elijah to you before that great and dreadful day of the Lord comes." Elijah was the enemy of the priest of Baal, and he closed the heavens so that there was no rain for 3 years and 6 months. No greater enemy of false gods can be found than Muhammad. To Muslims, he is the return of Elijah, and, as we know, during his reign, specified as 1260 days, which are years, there was no reign of further revelation for either Jews or Christians. After the 1260 years, however, Malachi foretold that the rains will begin as the great and dreadful day of the Lord comes. That would be in the Muslim year 1260, i.e., the Christian year 1844. Consider too Daniel's prophecy of 1260 days. Recall too that in the book of Daniel it is written that after times and a half, the shattering of the power of the holy people will be ended. Times are years, and thus the prophecy is that after 3.5 years, the shattering of the power of the holy people will be ended. 3.5 years is 42 months or 1260 days. The book of Revelation mentions 1260 days 5 times in different forms. These were the days in which the holy city would be given over to the nations, and 2 witnesses dressed in sackcloth would prophesy. As we'll see, these 2 witnesses are likely Muhammad and Ali. And recall the prophecy we reviewed in detail in chapter 21, that Seventh-day Adventists and many others who studied it concluded that Christ would return after the 2300 years of desolation ended, which the prophet Daniel foretold. Throughout the Christian world, this was known as the Great Awakening. They saw that if you use 457 BCE as the starting date for this prophecy, when the decrees to rebuild Jerusalem were completed, and move forward 2300 years of desolation, that this period ended in the year 1844. Then they believed that Christ would return, the heavenly Jerusalem would appear, and judgment begin. Once again, 1844 of the Christian calendar is the year 1260 of the Islamic calendar, and there is good reason to consider that great events occurred beginning in this year which ended Jewish desolation and simultaneously ended the reign of the 2 witnesses, Muhammad and Ali, who prophesied during the last 1260 years of these 2300 years. But for now, we must return to consider more about what happened to Islam after Muhammad died. Shortly after the death of Muhammad, there was debate about who was to succeed him, as there was no written instruction. It is reported that on his deathbed, Muhammad wanted to appoint his successor, likely to be his cousin Ali, who had grown up in his house, married his daughter, was always in the vanguard of Islamic activities, and was known to be wise and of good character. Apparently, Umar, who later became the second caliph, that is, successor to Muhammad, did not want the powers of the caliph to reside in the same family as Muhammad. He also preferred tradition and wanted to appoint an older man to lead the cause. Ali was younger than some of Muhammad's senior companions, and some felt that the elder Abu Bakr from another respected family was a better choice to succeed Muhammad. Not wishing to cause disunity, Ali temporarily conceded his right. The noble Abu Bakr reigned but 2 years as Caliph of Islam. Upon his death, Abu Bakr appointed Umar as Caliph. Umar reigned for 10 years with the support of Ali. In his 10th year, Umar was assassinated by a Persian of Zoroastrian or Christian descent, it's unclear which, who was angry at Umar for not granting him a tax exemption. The elderly Uthman was elected to be the third caliph by a small group appointed by Umar. Uthman is generally regarded as a good but weak caliph who was susceptible to nepotism and corruption. Nevertheless, to protect unity, Ali did not contest his rule. When Uthman was assassinated by Egyptian dissidents, it became Ali's turn to become caliph. The first 4 caliphs in Islam are known as the rightly guided, and their caliphate as the Rashidun, rightly guided caliphate. Ali was Muhammad's favorite deputy. This favor was well deserved. Ali was the second or third to believe in Muhammad, accepting him at about age 11. A few years later, when Muhammad called on his family for support, Ali was the only relative to assist. In what seems the first of several oral declarations, Muhammad then declared that Ali was his brother and successor. When assassins were coming to kill Muhammad, it was Ali who stayed behind as a decoy so that Muhammad and his family could flee to Yathrib, soon to be named Medina. Ali served as Muhammad's witness on numerous occasions, and Muhammad also selected him to be his scribe and deputy on important foreign missions. Ali was the standard bearer during the Battle of Badr and protected Muhammad during the Battle of Uhud. He was not only the standard bearer at the Battle of Khaybar, but was responsible for the victory there. In fact, Ali was a leader in all of Muhammad's military expeditions, save the one to Tabuk, where Muhammad left him behind to watch over Medina. It is reported that at that time, Muhammad said to Ali, "Are you not content, Ali, to stand to me as Aaron stood to Moses?" Upon his return from pilgrimage in 632, Muhammad told the assembled crowd at Ghadir Qum the importance of the Prophet's family, and taking Ali by the hand, announced that he whose Lord I am, Ali is his Lord. Quotations from Ali fill a good-sized book and represent some of the most precious guidance ever given to humanity. Here are a few that reveal his character and wisdom. People are either your brothers in faith or your equals in humanity. Finding fault in others is one's greatest fault. Be like a flower that gives its fragrance even to the hand that crushed it. Your remedy is within you. Within you is enfolded the entire universe. Upon the death of Uthman, the Islamic converts of Medina, called the Ansar, and Mecca, called the Muhajirun, those who knew both Muhammad and Ali the best, swore allegiance to Ali, who became the fourth caliph. It would soon become clear, however, that there were others who wanted the job, especially Muawiyah, governor of Syria. The caliphate of Ali was characterized by intolerance of corruption and protection of the poor and those conquered. Corruption is perhaps the most hated thing in Islam, with at least 50 references against it in the Quran. Upon becoming caliph, Ali dismissed Uthman's governors who he considered corrupt, incurring their wrath in the process. He pardoned all those who were conquered in battle, and he forbid his soldiers from looting conquered territory, paying them instead from the state treasury. He made tax-paying voluntary and forbid harassing taxpayers. He prioritized distributing state funds to the poor and renewed the practice of Muhammad of distributing conquered wealth equally among Muslims, drawing the ire of the privileged who felt that they should receive a greater share. Perhaps most significantly, understanding that corruption can easily creep into Islam when corrupt people bend the Quran to fit their ends, Ali believed that Muhammad had intended him to be the sole interpreter of the Quran and the traditions. Seeing corruption continue before his death, Ali appointed his sons Hassan and then Hussein, grandsons of Muhammad, to be sole interpreters after him. Muawiyah was the son of one of the arch-enemies of Muhammad in Mecca, Abu Sufyan. When Muhammad captured Mecca, Muawiyah became one of Muhammad's scribes, and after the death of Muhammad, he was appointed a deputy commander in Syria by Abu Bakr. Under Uthman, his kinsman from the Umayyad clan, Muawiyah became governor of Syria and Damascus, directing the war with Byzantines. Now having power, upon the death of Uthman, Muawiyah decided he would oppose the caliphate of Ali. This is the beginning of the rise of the dragon, spoken of in Revelation, and resulted in the first Muslim civil war. From this point on, even until today, there would be no more Muslim unity, and all because of the desire of some for the wealth and power of empire. Muawiyah led his army out to do battle with Ali and his followers who were then in Iraq. The first battle, the Battle of the Camel, occurred in 656 outside Basra in Iraq. Ali won. About 6 months later, the Battle of Siffin took place on the Syrian side of the headwaters of the Euphrates, bordering Iraq. This one ended in a negotiated stalemate, but with important consequences. A group of Muslims rejected the idea of arbitration with Muawiyah as being unquranic. They felt that Muawiyah had to be overcome in battle. They seceded from Ali's camp and became known as Kharijites, seceders. Allowing Muawiyah to retreat allowed him to return to Syria, where he would soon establish his own Umayyad Caliphate, claiming authority over the provinces established by Uthman and orchestrating the overthrow of Ali's governors. Soon after the stalemate at Siffin, Ali caught word of Kharijites mistreating inhabitants of the city of Nahrawan, just east of Baghdad. Ali brought his army to Nahrawan and convinced several thousand Kharijites to rejoin him. Seeing this, the remaining Kharijites attacked and were crushed by Ali's army. Later, however, in retaliation, one of the Kharijites snuck into Kufa, Iraq, and struck Ali on the head with a poisoned sword during morning prayers at the Great Mosque. Ali died 2 days later. Upon the death of Ali, his oldest son Hassan became caliph in Kufa, but was, of course, not recognized by Muawiyah. In his first speech to his father's followers at the Grand Mosque of Kufa after Ali had been killed, Hassan called Muslims to unite behind the descendants of Muhammad, saying, "I am of the family of the Prophet, from whom God has removed filth and whom he has purified, whose love he has made obligatory in his book, when he said, 'Whosoever performs a good act, we shall increase the good in it.' Performing a good act is love for us, the family of the Prophet." As the armies of Muawiyah and Hassan began assembling to fight near Baghdad, two things happened which weakened Hassan's forces. Believing that Hassan would negotiate peace with Muawiyah, like his father had done, Kharijites attacked and severely injured Hassan. Seeing him wounded and doubting his fighting resolve, many of Hassan's soldiers defected. In addition, Muawiyah bribed some of Hassan's commanders who also defected. These are the tools that the biblical dragon of corruption uses to seduce people. Hassan was thus forced to negotiate with Muawiyah to save his soldiers from sure death. A peace treaty was reached whereby Hassan would succeed Muawiyah as caliph at his death, or the matter of succession could be settled by a council. At the surrender ceremony, however, Muawiyah denied making promises of succession to Hassan, as it was his intention to make his son Yazid caliph. Hassan had been tricked. More tools of the dragon. Having relinquished his title of caliph, Hassan took up the title of imam, one who leads the way. This designation distinguishes his spiritual station from the material station of caliph, the ruler of the empire. Among Sunnis, politics and religion are separate. Not so in Shia Islam. After resigning his title of caliph, Hassan and his younger brother Hussein retreated to Medina and tried to stay out of politics. As time passed and Muawiyah got older, and his desire to have Yazid succeed him became more pressing, Muawiyah determined that the younger Hassan was a threat to his plan and had Hassan poisoned. Again, more trickery. Hassan died in 669, at which point Hassan's brother Hussein became the third imam. Hassan had ruled as imam for 10 years. When Muawiyah died, Hussein was called upon to recognize Yazid as the rightful caliph. Hussein refused and moved from Medina to Mecca. In Mecca, Hussein began receiving reports that the people of Kufa, Ali's former capital, were unhappy with Umayyad rule and asked if Hussein could come and be their spiritual leader. Catching wind of this, Yazid changed the liberal governor of Kufa with a fierce Umayyad loyalist who clamped down against any support for Hussein and killed Hussein's emissaries. Hussein, however, had already decided to make the journey to Kufa. Against the pleading of many, Hussein set out for Kufa, writing this letter explaining his motives. "I did not go out for fun and selfishness and for corruption and oppression. Rather, my goal is to correct the corruptions that have occurred in the nation of my ancestors. I want to command the good and forbid the bad, and follow the tradition of my grandfather and the way of my father, Ali ibn Abi Talib. So whoever accepts this truth and follows me has accepted the way of God, and whoever rejects and does not follow me, I will walk my way with patience and perseverance, so that God may be the judge between me and this nation, and he is the best judge. Proceeding slowly toward Kufa, Hussein was urged multiple times to attack the small forces that rode out from Kufa with directives to impede his progress and park Hussein's caravans in areas without water. Hussein, however, was loath to cause bloodshed and proceeded without violence to the village of Karbala on the outskirts of Kufa. There, Yazid's army from Kufa appeared. By some estimates, it outnumbered Hussein's small group by 100 to 1. Hussein encouraged those in his camp to abandon him and save themselves, and a few did. Thereafter, the Umayyad army surrounded and killed most of the travelers from Mecca, including Hussein. Only one son survived, Ali ibn Hussein, also known as Zainul Abidin, the adornment of worshippers, and Imam as-Sajjad, the prostrating Imam. Historians believe that it was the martyrdom of Hussein which forged the religious identity of Shia Islam. The shrine of Imam Hussein in Karbala is shown here. Listed at right are the Shia Imams after Imam Hussein, the third Imam. As you can see, Shia Islam split into two groups at the seventh Imam, and then what was the Ismaili branch split several more times after that. Another split occurred at the 11th Imam, and a completely independent religion, the Baha'i Faith, arose in the 19th century out of prophecy related to the 12th Imam, who is said to be in hiding until the end of the age. External to Islam, there were forces who did not understand it, made fun of it, and did not want to relinquish their own power to its revelation. The book of Revelation appears to have foretold this too. I've inserted the names Muhammad and Ali to make what appears to be the reference plain. Revelation 11:10 records, "The inhabitants of the earth will gloat over them," Muhammad and his spiritual successor Ali, "and will celebrate by sending each other gifts, because these two prophets had tormented those who live on earth." It's clear that many inhabitants of the earth have gloated over the setbacks and tragedies that befell Muhammad and Ali and their cause, who many feel have caused nothing but trouble on earth. We must be careful that we do not fall into this cultural trap of hating and misunderstanding Muslims, because the next verse in Revelation reveals that the prophetic work of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam is far from over. It reads, "But after the 3.5 days, the 1260 years we just spoke of, the breath of life from God entered them," the cause of Muhammad and Ali, "and they stood on their feet, and terror struck those who saw them." This verse brings us again to events that should, if the prophecy has meaning and our interpretation is correct, begin in 1844. But before we get to that, there's much more spiritual history to cover. Here's what we've learned. This chapter has invited us to consider that Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are part of one coordinated, united, and evolving process. Looking through this lens has allowed us to see each of these religions in a different and arguably better light. As Islam was the most recent of these religions, we would expect that it provides the clearest picture of how these religions see God's kingdom on earth. We've seen, however, that its great promise to bring justice and peace to the earth was shattered shortly after Muhammad died, when Islam split into two, and we've seen how this very division seems to have been foretold in the Bible. We've also seen how the Bible appears to have foreseen the West's ignorance and general rejection of Islam, and why. Finally, we've observed that the Bible seems to have provided an indication of how long the dispensation of Islam would last and what may happen at the end of this time. This sets us up to look at Islamic eschatology, which we'll do in the next chapter.